Amazing transformation. A single dad rancher discovered the young widow's struggle and gave her a chance at redemption. Jake felt the sun scorching down on his back as he mended the fence, each swing of the hammer echoing through the vast emptiness of his ranch. Dust swirled in the heat, and his gaze drifted beyond the boundary of his land to a rundown farmhouse just beyond the edge of town. The decaying structure was a remnant of better days, calling to him like a ghost that refused to fade. Something stirred inside him, an instinct pulling him toward the misery of another's struggle, perhaps one he could understand too well. Behind his knotted brow, he felt the weight of his responsibilities as a single father suffocating him like the Texas summer heat. At 34, he had already buried too much his wife, Hope, the land itself, slowly cracking under a relentless drought. Yet, as he stood, hands trembling slightly, he caught sight of a woman kneeling in the dirt, her toddlers tangled at her feet. Clara. He had seen her around town, her eyes always shuttered, burdened by grief. There was something alarming in how he recognized that weary strength behind her fragile facade. It mirrored his own. With a heart oddly pricked by the sight, he hesitated, ruminating over the high cost of reaching out. Would this small connection bring the very scrutiny he had shied away from all these years? The whispers of the townsfolk would surely follow him like shadows, doubting his intentions while they gleaned what little solace they could from another's misfortune. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. The days turned into sleepless nights as the weight of his indecision gnawed at him. How did one even approach her? Jake wanted to lend a hand, maybe invite her to join forces on the daunting task of reviving the land. But doubt kept him rooted in place, his heart racing as he pictured Clara's tired, wary eyes meeting his own. At night, under an unyielding sky stitched with stars, the memory of her smile ignited something he had thought long extinguished, a flicker of hope. Yet, each time he lay his head down, the doubt spiraled. What if getting close would unveil a deeper secret? What if she didn't want help? And the crushing reality settled once more. Could he really invite the chaos of another's tragedy into his already fractured life? Then, like a knife twisting in his gut, the gossip reached him. Whispers about Clara exploiting kindness gnawed at him in public conversations, as he watched the townsfolk glance at him with palpable expectation. He could feel it, their judgment like a weight pressing against his chest, questioning his very intentions. In one moment of weakness, would he bow to social pressure and turn away from whatever light Clara might bring? The stakes rose alarmingly as he stood on the precipice of a profound decision. The fragile bond they were forming felt like a lit fuse, with an explosive past hanging heavily over Clara. He could sense the friction, and just when it felt like a breakthrough could be made, the ground beneath them shifted. A chilling revelation awaited him, unraveling everything he believed to be true, threatening to shatter the connection he was beginning to cherish. Would he stand strong, or would he crumble under the weight of expectation? His chest tightened, brimming with unanswered questions that echoed through his mind, leaving him desperate for clarity. A chance at redemption. The sting of the hypothetical scenarios haunted Jake as he wrestled with the urgency of the moment. He stood in the fading light, clutching the hammer as it felt all too heavy in his hand, mirroring the turmoil of choices spinning in his mind. The fence repair could wait. Every fiber of his being was now tuned to the tragic story unfolding just beyond his property line. He imagined Clara wrestling not just with her dilapidated home, but with a life of silence that stifled her voice, where hope lingered like the last breath of summer. Finally, the decision became too pressing to disregard. Clenching his jaw, Jake recognized he had to break the cycle of apprehension, if only for the sake of his own sanity. This was not merely about Clara. It was about his growth, the kind of growth sparked by the unknown. With apprehension boiling beneath his skin, Jake set toward the crumbling facade of her home, each step weighed down by the whispers of judgment waiting to be cast. The journey across the parched earth felt like crossing a tightrope strung between despair and possibility. The closer he got to her, the more clarity dawned. This wasn't just about offering comfort. It was an invitation for him to lean into the uncertainty that had dictated his life for too long. What if in helping her, he found a pathway leading to his own redemption? He had sacrificed so much, and in that moment of resolution, it became clear he could no longer let fear dictate his life. Clara looked up from her toil as he approached, expression shifting from surprise to wariness. Her stiff posture suggested she expected the worst, a reflection of the judgment that had marred her days. Jake swallowed his nervousness, forcing himself to meet those sunken eyes that mirrored the weight of burdens. "Clara," he began, voice rough around the edges but steady, "I thought you might need some help." Her gaze searched his face, and he felt the unvoiced questions hanging like a summer storm. Would she perceive this as pity or a genuine offer? Though uncertainty rippled between them, there was an undeniable spark of recognition, the understanding of shared pain that bridged the chasm of their lives. "I don't want charity," Clara replied, tension thrumming in the air between them. The defensive edge in her voice could have cut through steel, but Jake couldn't retreat now, nor did he want to. What he had to offer was not charity, it was courage. "Nor do I feel like I'm giving it," he said, biting back his own defensiveness. "It's a partnership. This land needs work, and I can tell you do too." He gestured toward the desolate garden where her children played. "Let us figure out how to revive this place together." In her eyes, a flicker of something, perhaps hope or perhaps distrust. He could see the cogs turning in her mind as she weighed the sincerity behind his words against the whispers of her past that threatened to drown out the promise of something new. What Jake didn't anticipate was the eruption of buried fears in her reply. "What's your angle, Jake? You don't even know me." The truth hit him like a clap of thunder. The angle was clear: he wanted to heal, to reconcile not just with his past, but with the future that loomed ahead. He didn't have all the answers. He only had this moment and a chance to engage. With her guarded stance, Jake realized that he too had to let down his own walls. This journey was going to test everything: his values, his heart, and perhaps the very foundation of his identity. The power shift was palpable, tugging at his resolve, yet he stood firm. Facing her, he tentatively reached out, aware that what lay ahead could bury him deeper or finally lift him from the relentless sorrow that had shadowed him for years. Would he seize the chance for connection, or retreat into the dust of his own fears? The answer hung heavily in the air, a question lingering on the edge of discovery, with the profound realization that both of their lives could change forever or not at all. What had begun as a mere desire to help could lead them both into uncharted territory, and Jake could feel the weight of that moment snaking around him, pressing for a decision that might just redefine everything he believed about himself. Jake was acutely aware of the tension radiating between him and Clara, a palpable barrier fortified by years of unspoken sorrow. Her defensiveness should have deterred him, but instead, it ignited an unexpected resolve within. He took a deep breath, the air stinging his lungs, and reassessed his approach. "I know this might feel uncomfortable," he said, adjusting his posture to appear more relaxed. "But it feels wrong not to reach out. We all carry our burdens, right? Maybe we can lighten the load together." Clara's eyes softened briefly, a flicker of vulnerability cutting through the armor she'd wrapped around herself. He threaded a new thread of hope through the fraying tapestry of her life, urging her to believe in mutual strength, not solitary charitability. As the silence stretched uncomfortably, Jake decided to be candid. "I'm in a rough patch myself, long story. I thought fixing this fence would help chase away some of that weight, but now I think maybe there's more to this." He watched her closely, gauging her reaction. Something shifted in her expression, a mixture of curiosity and skepticism battling for dominance. He pressed on. "Life has a funny way of circling us back to the same mountains, doesn't it? You might think I'm just another guy trying to play the hero, but I've been an outsider too, lost and searching for meaning in the mundane." Despite the defenses still present, the cracks in her armor were starting to deepen. "You think you get it?" "It's not that simple," Clara said, her voice losing some of its fiery edge. The softening prompted a wave of relief through Jake. It was a crack, an opening. "Yes, I'm not saying I do," he reassured her, "but I understand the need to keep people at arm's length. If I didn't I wouldn't be here right now, feeling vulnerable myself." That is all I want. Let us not build more walls. Let us build something that can stand strong. Their eyes locked, and for a moment, Jake saw the ghost of hope swirl behind her defensive mask. It didn't last. The familiar shadows overtook her features, a reminder that trust, especially in someone new, was painstakingly earned. Why now? She asked, genuinely probing. What makes you want to help me? The question curled his insides, twisting at the gut. What did he have to lose by telling the truth? I refuse to let my past dictate my future any longer. Reaching out to you, helping you, is my way of reclaiming the parts of me that I lost. I messed things up before, and I don't want to live in regret. The words spilled out before he could rein them in. Clara considered them, and he noted the slight shift in her stance, inching closer to the possibility of connection. They had ventured into shared vulnerability, a daunting leap toward understanding that might breathe life into both of their weary souls. Just then, the distant sound of laughter interrupted their moment. Her children were obliviously playing, basking in the sun's rays, laughter colliding with the heavy air around them, reminders of life pressing forward despite their burdens. Jake watched them and thought of his own. Parenting had never been simple, but it compelled him toward action. Let us focus on the kids, he suggested, a thought striking him. What if repairing this place becomes part of their adventure? They need a stable home and a safe space to grow. You can raise them, and I can teach them about caring for the land. It could be a fresh start. Clara glanced toward her children, and for the first time, a hint of hope danced across her face. He could feel the industrious energy of possibility swirling around them, and it was exhilarating. But just like that, the flicker of connection began to fade, doubt resurfacing. Jake took an involuntary step back, reflecting on Clara's motley history, the ache of survival stretching back years, far longer than his own troubles. Would she ever truly allow him in? He felt a surge of resolve. He wanted to be the light for her, not a shadow cast by his own fears. But just as he began to think of their next step, her voice broke through, heavy with caution. I don't know if it's that simple, Jake. You're more than welcome to help. But do we both want this connection? Are you committed? Her directness struck him, amplifying the stakes all at once. The answer was vital. It could either bring him closer to her or unravel everything. More than you know, he assured. But as the words left his mouth, the weight of his certainty felt unreal, shadowed by long-forgotten disappointments. Did he have what it took to lift her up without losing himself in the process? Or was this connection destined to falter under the weight of their respective histories? The uncertainty loomed heavy again, begging the question. Could he navigate through their complex emotions, both as a father and a potential partner? The moment felt endless, and Jake could almost hear the ticking clock of their decision echoing between them. Jake's mind raced as he grappled with Clara's question. Commitment, what did it truly require? He felt as though he were standing on the precipice of something momentous, teetering between hope and the overwhelming weight of doubt. I'm here, he said finally, the honesty imbuing his tone with a steadiness he hoped would reach her. I want to help, but I'm not expecting results overnight. This, he gestured around them, is going to take time. We both have our mountains to climb. Clara's brow furrowed as she processed his words. He could see the gears turning in her mind, battling the instincts of a survivor against the vulnerability she dared not embrace. Time. That's easier said than done, Jake, she replied, crossing her arms in a protective stance. He recognized the tension in her body as a sign of her fear. She was scared that investing in this connection might result in pain again. But strengthening that connection was paramount to both of their healing processes. What if we set small goals? He suggested, stepping cautiously into the space where hope met vulnerability. We repair the fence first, make sure your kids can play here safely. That's manageable, right? We can build trust, one project at a time. A skepticism lingered in her eyes, but her posture relaxed slightly. The thought of a collaborative venture seemed to strike a chord amid her uncertainties. You really think repairing a fence will make a difference? It's more than just a fence, Jake replied, leaning forward to catch her attention. It's about establishing a safe space, a refuge for your kids to thrive, where laughter and joy can replace the shadows. This first step could lead us to more. You and your children deserve that. As Clara absorbed his words, Jake's own heart raced. He was not merely offering to repair a physical object. He was inviting her into the process of building a foundation figuratively and literally on which they could both stand. It was revealing a new facet of himself. He was learning to take a risk, to show up unafraid of what it might cost him. Okay, Clara finally breathed, her voice softer. Let us try it together. The slightest twitch of her lips betrayed the tiniest ounce of relief as this mutual agreement unfolded between them. A new dynamic had formed, one that flickered with potential that as they began discussing how to tackle the fence. Jake felt an unfamiliar ease mingle with determination. He realized that perhaps, in striving to help Clara and her children, he was also crafting his own path toward redemption. So, they delved into the plans, laying out materials, discussing scheduled workloads, and bouncing ideas back and forth. Slowly, Clara's words started to flow freer, her laughter mingling with memories of home and the visions she held for her children, threading them into a tangible plan. Each exchange deepened their bond, helping him recognize his potential not only as a father but also as a friend. But beneath the surface, Jake felt an unresolved tension surface, the worry that perhaps this endeavor would lay bare the cracks in their rapidly forming foundation. What would happen when Clara inevitably faced setbacks, as she surely would? As they finished up their discussion, Clara hesitated for a moment, her eyes looking far away as if contemplating a profound thought. Jake, I really appreciate this, she said quietly. But just promise me we don't rush into anything emotionally. I need time, and I can't afford to get hurt again. The air thickened, and the weight of her expectation landed squarely on him. I promise, he said, though the uncertainty gnawed at him. Would he be able to keep that promise when the emotional tides inevitably rose? Jake's thoughts lingered on this precarious balance they were trying to forge. Just as he sought mutual support, he worried that allowing himself to become too invested could expose both of them to deeper trials as they walked toward her children, laughing and playing in the golden sunlight. He recognized the joy that could seize even fleeting moments. Yet, the looming consequences of their new connection lingered heavily, planning to pounce on any naivete they might hold that he needed to remain true to himself even in this transformative journey. But at what cost? With every intention to lift Clara up, Jake faced the dawning realization. He had to confront the shadows of his own past before he could truly help her escape hers. And just as he began to understand the immense task ahead, a sharp voice pierced the warm atmosphere. Hey, what are you two doing here? It was Clara's neighbor, his tone laced with skepticism. The validation of their intentions felt suddenly exposed under scrutiny, and Jake knew this was the moment when doubts could spiral into a confrontation, sending ripples across the fragile bond they were attempting to build. Complications had arrived, and the stakes had just escalated. Jake's heart raced as he turned toward Clara's neighbor, a tall figure framed against the late afternoon sun, casting a looming shadow. The tension snapped into razor-sharp focus, forcing Jake to grapple with both his instincts and the weight of the situation. He could feel Clara's hesitation beside him, the air thick with vulnerability turned to tension. Just helping Clara with some repairs, he said, deliberately keeping his tone even. But even as the words left his mouth, he questioned their sufficiency. Would they sound like an excuse or an invitation to doubt? The neighbor's eyes narrowed, assessing Jake and then shifting to Clara, as if searching for reassurance. Really? You've only just met. What makes you think you can step in and do this? The skepticism was palpable, and Jake sensed not just a challenge, but a litmus test of their newfound camaraderie. They had begun to build trust, yes, but here stood a wall threatening to disrupt everything they had started, the proverbial mountain that seemed insurmountable. I understand your concern, Jake replied, forcing himself to remain calm. But that doesn't change the fact that Clara and I agreed to work on the fence. It's for her kids to have a safe space to play. Clara's eyes flickered with gratitude, and something darker fear that this moment could undo everything they'd begun to construct. Jake could sense her apprehension. She was wrestling with the vulnerability that had compelled her to trust him in the first place. A silence fell between them, thick and charged. The neighbor crossed his arms, the posture defensive, and Jake clenched his jaw, swallowing down his own confusion. Why did it feel like he was being judged for wanting to help? The thought sharpened his resolve. Look, Jake continued, grounding his gaze on the neighbor. I know it might seem strange, but sometimes people need to extend a hand to lift each other up. Clara deserves support, just like anyone else. In that moment, he surprised himself. Standing there, facing suspicion head-on, he felt a flicker of confidence spark within him. Maybe his own past did not have to dictate the limits of his future. Wasn't this what he had been striving for: mutual support, shared strengths? The neighbor stared for what felt like an eternity before he finally nodded, not entirely conceding, but willing to hear more. All right, but remember that taking on someone else's burdens comes with its own risks. Jake nodded back, understanding. I get that, but I'm ready to take that on. As the tension eased slightly, Jake sensed a new dynamic emerging not only with Clara, but within himself as well. The confrontation with the neighbor had reaffirmed the commitment he felt, not just to help Clara, but to redefine the boundaries of his own personal growth. Here he was, on a path where his actions could yield both connection and healing. Reinvigorated, Jake shifted his focus back to Clara, whose eyes were wide. Are you okay? He asked softly, reaching out to her. I think so, she replied, her voice steadying. Thank you for standing up. I didn't expect you to handle that so well. Neither did I, he admitted, surprised at his own statement. But I think we're learning as we go, right? She smiled, and it was fragile, yet genuine, a bloom amidst the soil of doubt. For the first time, he recognized the depths of their engagement and realized he was not only finding a way to connect, he was also discovering hidden facets of himself he never knew existed. But with that realization came a new awareness. What would it mean to sustain this growth when faced with deeper challenges ahead? How could he navigate the complexities of emerging feelings while keeping their bond intact, especially in the face of skepticism from others? As they let go of the encounter with the neighbor, Jake glanced back toward Clara's children, still playing nearby, a reminder of what lay at stake. There was much work to be done, both outside and within. He needed to guide them forward without jeopardizing the fragile building blocks of their connection. What next? Clara asked, her voice full of hope and trepidation. Before Jake could respond, a sudden noise cut through the air. A crashing sound from behind the fence shattered the calm atmosphere like glass, prompting them to turn in alarm. This moment held more than just uncertainty. It could alter the very course of their future endeavors. Let us check it out, he said, steeling himself for whatever lay ahead. What they would find might either deepen their resolve or expose weaknesses they still had to confront. The stakes were rising, yet he felt more prepared than he ever had before. As Jake rounded the corner of the dilapidated fence, adrenaline coursed through him. The sounds of panic rippled from the other side, an eruption of chaos that disturbed the serene evening. What he anticipated were the remnants of an accident, but as they approached, he sensed a more profound implication, something that could pivot them toward hardship or a stronger union. He glanced back at Clara, whose eyes mirrored uncertainty and fear. Stay close, he ordered, not because he doubted her ability, but because he felt a protective instinct surging, a burgeoning role he was beginning to embrace. They reached the fence just as a flurry of movement caught his eye. A cluster of objects, tools, lopsided planters, and an overturned wheelbarrow conversed with the chaos above. But the real cause of the ruckus emerged in the form of Clara's youngest child, Tommy, half hidden in a tangle of garden debris, tears flowing freely down his cheeks. Jake, Clara gasped, rushing forward, her earlier composure dissolving like mist in the rising sunlight. Without a second thought, Jake followed her lead, sprinting toward the boy. As they neared, Clara's hand reached out to scoop Tommy from his makeshift prison. Jake felt the weight of a decision loom over him. Would he act instinctively, as he often had when trouble knocked? Or should he assess the emotional landscape he was now part of? Tommy, sweetheart, are you okay? Clara's voice trembled, yet held the undercurrents of authority and love. I'm okay, Mom. I just tripped. He sniffled, looking between her and Jake, confusion clouding his young features. Relief washed over Jake, but with it came the urgency of clarity and purpose. This moment showcased not only the fragility of childhood, but also the depth of their collective struggle. He wasn't just supporting Clara. He was stepping into a role that could shape their future. Let us help him out, he suggested softly, crouching down to Tommy's level, his voice soothing, calming the child's racing heart. But it was then that Jake recognized a shift within himself. Here he was, no longer solely addressing a daunting task. Instead, he found himself equally invested in unearthing deeper emotions, transforming fear into strength. While Clara worked to clear the debris alongside Tommy, he seized the moment to initiate a dialogue that would fortify their bond. "What if we make a play area right here?" Jake proposed, gesturing to the intersection of their 2 yards, previously just an idea. "A safe spot for you and your friends." Tommy's eyes lit up a spark that ignited a fevered enthusiasm in Clara as well. She glanced at Jake, realization dawning upon her. "That could work," she admitted, her voice brimming with an energy he hadn't yet seen. Emboldened by her validation, Jake pressed on. "I'm thinking swings, maybe a little slide." He was already planning, envisioning how this could manifest not just as a space for play, but as a foundation for shared memories. In that moment, Jake understood that this was more than a physical construct. It was an opportunity for Clara and him to fortify the walls that defined their nascent relationship. He could feel himself shifting from mere helper to vital ally, a role he had always shied away from. Yet the very act of proposing this plan opened the gates to a community built on trust and support. "We could design it together, right?" Jake said to Tommy, whose enthusiasm remained infectious. The boy nodded, now fully engaged, abandoning his previous worry. Clara stepped back, watching him, a soft smile blooming across her face. It filled Jake's chest with warmth and invigorated his sense of purpose. He was not just preventing Tommy from burden, he was constituting a familial structure that could develop beyond shared tasks. Each interaction was layering their connection like bricks in a long-desired fortress. But as excitement filled the air and future plans took shape, another worry gnawed at Jake's consciousness. Would he truly be able to stay the course? It dawned on him that the complexities of intertwining their lives meant grappling with emotions that sought to undermine this budding transition. About that neighbor, Clara's voice trailed off, her expression shifting from bright to contemplative, emotions emerging freshly at the surface. Jake felt the air thicken again. There was more to delve into. How would they face potential obstacles together, especially from those around them who might not understand their bond? "Let us not worry about that right now," he offered, attempting to shield her from doubt even as uncertainties loomed. "Let us focus on what we can build together." He felt ready to face the external world, but internally he knew this was merely the beginning of their journey. What they were constructing not just in the yard, but within themselves required trust, patience, and an honesty that could withstand external pressures. Tommy tugged at Clara's sleeves, his joy infectious again. But just as Jake felt their connection deepen, the quiet resonated with a question that hung palpably in the air. Would he be prepared when the time came, not just to build a playground, but to safeguard the fragile acknowledgement of vulnerability they had unearthed together? As they gathered their tools to begin building, Jake realized that the challenge of a neighbor's skepticism was small compared to the work required to ensure that his burgeoning role would endure the trials to come. The stakes were not just their plans for the garden. They encompassed their truest selves, determined to emerge stronger. Jake cast a glance toward Clara, her spirit bolstered by the prospect of their shared future. Yet, in that moment, he couldn't shake the sense that looming forces sought to test them, obscured yet potent. As they began, a distant noise beckoned from beyond the property, drawing their collective gaze. The threatening echo of something unfinished loomed over the horizon, waiting to challenge everything they had just begun to build. The first hammer strike rang out, reverberating through the stillness of the yard. Jake watched as Clara held the tool with a hesitant grip, her determination battling with trepidation. He took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the moment. This simple act of building would do more than erect swings and slides. It would fortify their fragile alliance against the impending uncertainty. "Just like this, Clara," he encouraged, demonstrating how to guide the nail without crushing it. "It's all about finding the right rhythm." Her brow furrowed as she focused, but Jake sensed something deeper beneath her surface, an exploration of self that mirrored his own. Their collective effort was leading them both toward uncharted territory. Every swing of the hammer chipped away at the past they carried while shaping a shared future. The connection they were forging transcended mere construction. Each nail driven deep into the wood marked a commitment and assertion that they were willing to build not just a playground, but a safe haven where laughter would arise amidst past sorrows. Regaining a sense of family was the overwhelming goal cloaked beneath their current task. Let us do this together, okay? I want your ideas too, he added, gazing into Clara's eyes with earnestness. She smiled, her tension beginning to ease. What kind of ideas could I possibly contribute to a playground? She asked, self-deprecation lacing her words. You've got a creative spirit, don't downplay it. The warmth of his words coaxed something from her, igniting a flicker of confidence. As they moved on from hammering to sketching out their plans, he observed Clara's demeanor shift, her shoulders rolling back, her smiles less guarded. Her gaze sparkled with the stirrings of imagination as she visualized a slide wrapped in colorful paint, paths marked by bright stones that could lead children to whimsical adventures. This transformation was intoxicating for Jake. Each moment they experimented and laughed together solidified his belief in the budding relationship. But with this evolution came an awareness success demanded more than just enthusiasm. It called for a fusion of authenticity, vulnerability, and honesty about their pasts. Can we talk about the neighbor now? She asked suddenly, her tone slipping from light-hearted to serious. His heart sank a little at the intrusion of reality. You mean Mrs. Baxter? The name alone stirred tumultuous memories of whispered judgments and shaming glances exchanged over fences woven by unsought scrutiny. Her nervous chuckle was tinged with fear. Yes, I think we should prepare ourselves for the gossip that comes with building a play area where children run and laugh. While he understood her concern, he couldn't shake the sensation that the topic warranted more than mere acknowledgement. Resolving to confront the potential discord head-on, he nodded firmly. I think it's important. If we're going to build something and each other, we also have to build our defenses against negativity. Clara regarded him with a heightened sense of seriousness. This isn't just about us, Jake. Tommy deserves a neighborhood that looks out for him too. Her sentence faded, leaving an urgent question dangling. Did she harbor unspoken fears related to her son's well-being alongside their reconnection? Determined not to allow doubt to gain purchase, he took a step forward, determination steeling his spine. Together, we can create that safe space where he can grow without the weight of scrutiny bearing down on him. Let us stand united. United, she repeated, the assurance surfacing in her voice. But just as hope began to lace their conversation, shadows spread across the yard, and Jake turned instinctively towards the source, his pulse quickening once more. A figure emerged, their features obscured by the lengthening shadows of evening. Mrs. Baxter. Looks like the neighborhood watch has arrived, Jake whispered, a wave of nerves coursing through his core. He had braced himself for confrontations, yet the reality of the moment felt sharper and more immediate than any preparation he had conjured. Mrs. Baxter approached. He could feel the air between them thicken. A reckoning was at hand. Would they take the plunge together, proving their resolve against derision? As her piercing gaze locked onto theirs, Jake knew this was just as much about him as it was about Clara. His past failures attempted to work their way to the fore. The moment had arrived to challenge the status quo and to discern if he could indeed fight for what they were building together, starting now. What lay ahead? Would they rise together or falter under the scrutiny of outsiders? Jake's heart thrashed within his chest as Mrs. Baxter's figure came into sharper focus. Each step she took felt like a countdown, pulling him further from the fleeting joy of collaboration and deeper into a confrontation he had sought to avoid. Clara stood to his side, her presence a comforting warmth, but he could sense her tension mirrored his own. Afternoon, Mrs. Baxter, he managed, forcing calmness into his voice. What brings you here? She approached with a measured stride, her demeanor stoic yet probing. Jake, I hope you know that building a playground might not be the best idea for the neighborhood, she began. Her tone was saturated with a self-righteous undertone. Almost as if she relished the role of the neighborhood sentinel, he exchanged a quick glance with Clara. A silent acknowledgement passed between them. This was the moment to stand as one. Why do you say that? He asked, pushing a skeptical brow higher. Mrs. Baxter's eyes sparkled with a familiar disdain, dismissing his question. It attracts all sorts of rambunctious children. Not all kids are supervised, Jake. You know that. Think of the noise, the chaos. Her voice trailed into the thick air, rippling through Jake. He recognized the undercurrents of judgment, surfacing long-buried insecurities within him. Clara stepped closer to him, her voice bold. But it's a place where children can express themselves, be creative, and feel safe. Tommy deserves that, don't you think? Jake felt an unexpected swell of admiration for her. This was the Clara he had begun to see, bold, unyielding, defying the restrictions she had initially placed on herself. Together, they could forge ahead, both as partners and as advocates for Tommy. Children need more than walls to confine them, Jake added, surprising himself with the conviction in his voice. They need to learn boundaries through experiences, to play and interact without fear of censure. We're fostering a sense of belonging here, not chaos. Mrs. Baxter's posture stiffened. She was preparing for a fight. I doubt the neighbors will appreciate such changes. They've always considered the peace of this community paramount. In that instant, her words struck Jake like a heavy weight. The familiarity of judgment washed over him, filling him with doubt. Yet, alongside it, a flicker of defiance ignited. His own childhood had been shadowed by the limits placed upon him through the lens of others' opinions. He couldn't allow that to extend into Tommy's life. Maybe addressing our fears head-on will break those shadows, Jake responded, stealing his gaze. If we stand by what we believe in, perhaps the neighborhood will begin to shift. There was a moment of silence, thick with unspoken tension. Clara clasped his hand, her fingers anchoring him against the tide of anxiety. Let us invite the community to contribute ideas. Maybe a meeting, she suggested, her voice carrying newfound strength. A meeting? Mrs. Baxter chuckled disdainfully, her expression a mix of shock and skepticism. Do you really think they'd care to meet with you two? Actually, I do, Jake said. Determination coursed through him, transforming uncertainty into purpose. They'll care if they know our goal is to create a safe space for children. It was in that moment he comprehended an undeniable truth. This playground represented more than swings and slides. It signified hope, a reclamation of their lives from the scrutiny that had long shackled them. Clara's quiet courage and proactive stance invigorated him, compelling him to fend off the specter of Mrs. Baxter's negativity, which had haunted him for so long. As their conversation stagnated back and forth, Jake thought about the potential ripple effects of this moment. What would happen when they finally shared their vision? Would it unify or further divide them? The fear of failure mingled with a flickering excitement toward all that he and Clara might yet accomplish together. Mrs. Baxter narrowed her eyes, her resolve shaking for the first time. I'll be watching, she warned, pivoting on her heel, frustration palpable in her. Retreat. Jake breathed a deep, replenishing sigh of relief, feeling the tension loosen its grip around him. But now, the suspicion surrounding them loomed larger. The shadows of their pasts, and the community's judgment, still lingered on the horizon. What if she stirs up even more trouble? Clara's voice trembled slightly, veering back to the fragile aspects of their undertaking. We've got each other, Jake replied, a cocktail of fear and courage fueling him. Let us build something real. And if necessary, let us face whatever comes together. Just as they began discussing their next steps, a loud crash echoed from nearby. A piece of playground equipment had toppled over, unveiling hidden dangers. In that moment, Jake realized their greatest challenge wasn't just community skepticism, but their readiness to confront the unexpected, starting with the very foundation they were trying to create. How would they navigate the subsequent storm? Jake stared at the overturned playground equipment, his heart racing once more, but this time with a different kind of urgency. The children's laughter that had filled the air moments before had evaporated, replaced by the harsh screech of metal against asphalt. The crash amplified the significance of their venture. This place could be both chaotic and dangerous, just as Mrs. Baxter had warned. Yet, it also needed to become a place of learning and growth. Clara's hand tightened around his, her unease palpable. What do we do? Her voice barely rose above the rattle of the metal frame. We need to fix it, he said, words spilling out before he could second-guess himself. Now, she nodded, albeit hesitantly. As they rushed toward the fallen equipment, Jake could feel the weight of Mrs. Baxter's skepticism creeping back into his mind. This was the vital test, the first of many they would face if they were truly to bring their vision to life. Let us assess the damage, Jake suggested, crouching down near the twisted metal. His hands trembled slightly as they brushed against the jagged edges, a direct reminder of the hazards they were trying to eliminate. Clara knelt beside him, a calculated look crossing her face as she appraised the challenge. We could use the support of the neighborhood on this, though it's not much to start with. Perhaps we could also clean the area up while we're at it? Her tenacity became a beacon. They weren't just addressing the toppled equipment anymore. They were taking a stand. Each small action they took would speak a fraction louder than words, proving they were committed to safety and creativity in the face of adversity. "I'll grab the tools from the shed," Jake declared. The prospect of immediate action reignited a flicker of purpose within him, overwhelming the residual doubt that sat heavily in the back of his mind. Making his way back to the shed, he felt the shift within himself, a burgeoning sense of responsibility blooming alongside renewed determination. As he gathered screws, a wrench, and some spare wood, he couldn't shake the nagging thought of Mrs. Baxter's prying eyes, observing every misstep, ready to capitalize on any sign of failure. Breathing deeply, he pushed the anxiety aside, focusing instead on the task that lay ahead. Returning to Clara, he found her already devising a makeshift solution to support the equipment. "If we secure the base here, and then hoist it back into position," she suggested thoughtfully, her brow furrowed in concentration. "Let us do it," he replied. Inspiration coursed through him, two relatively inexperienced individuals willing to make a tangible change, right then and there. They worked in tandem, their movements becoming synchronized as Jake steadied the frame while Clara tightened screws, her confidence blooming with each turn. As they persevered, Jake realized how this project was shaping him. He wasn't merely acting as a caretaker for the playground, but also for himself. Each small victory brought clarity and purpose. He was learning to navigate the complexities of responsibility and collaboration he had long shied away from. After what felt like hours of labor, they finally secured the equipment, standing back to admire their work. What had been a symbol of potential chaos now gleamed under the sunlight as a testament to their resolve. Clara's wipes of sweat revealed a fire kindled within her, a revelation sparked by their united effort. "That wasn't so bad, right?" Jake smiled, their shared experience now a thread binding them, testing boundaries, building here and now. But the echoed crash of Mrs. Baxter's earlier words slithered back into his thoughts, warning him of the looming uncertainty. They had faced one challenge, but knew others would arise, more potent ones that threatened to destabilize what they had just built. "What if this isn't enough?" he confessed, vulnerability bleeding into his voice. "What if we don't gain any support?" Clara's response was immediate. Her hand sought his in an act of solidarity. "We take one step at a time together. It's about more than the playground now. It is about more than our fear." Her unwavering belief was infectious, igniting an impulsive fire of purpose within him. But as they began to explore next steps, ideas for meetings, calls for community contributions, the distant sound of an approaching vehicle with flashing lights interrupted their plans. The reality of scrutiny washed over him anew, and questions crowded his mind. What consequences awaited them? What judgments would follow? Jake steadied himself as the vehicle stopped. He didn't want to shy away. This time, he needed to confront whatever came next head-on. Jake felt the weight of the moment as he faced the flashing lights reflecting off the playground they had just worked so hard to secure. The sheriff stepped out of his vehicle, a firm figure assembled with authority. Clara stood beside him, her fingers interlaced with his, providing a grounding reminder of their mutual commitment. The uncertainty was tangibly heavy in the air, pressing down with the potential for scrutiny and judgment from the outside world. "Evening," the sheriff greeted, scanning the scene before him. "I heard reports of a bit of noise coming from this area. Is everything all right?" Jake drew in a deep breath, feeling the pressure of the moment settle on his shoulders. He had a choice. He could either hide behind excuses or step forward, embodying the change he wished to see for himself and Tommy. "We're fine," he replied steadily, his gaze unyielding. "We're attempting to build a playground for the children around here. Something safe and fun." The words tumbled out of him with an honesty he hadn't expected to find, bolstered by the weight of Clara's presence beside him. "Playground? Is that why there's a family meeting in the works?" The sheriff's eyebrow raised in curiosity. "I heard some talk amongst the residents. They're concerned about the changes happening here." "Concern?" Jake felt the familiar prick of nerves. Just days ago, the very thought of facing the neighborhood seemed daunting, but now, with Clara's unwavering confidence beside him, it was an invitation to rise above the daunting task at hand. "We're inviting everyone to contribute to the vision," Jake explained, forcing each syllable to flow with conviction. "We want this to be a safe, enjoyable place not just for kids, but for the community." Clara took a step forward. "It's vital for children like Tommy to have an environment that encourages creativity and joy. We believe it can bridge gaps in the neighborhood." Her voice was resolute, her earlier doubts evaporating in their collective determination. The sheriff seemed to ponder over their words, and Jake could almost see the gears turning in his head as he evaluated their sincerity. "Well, I respect your effort, but keep the peace in mind. It's a small town. Anything disruptive might raise even more eyebrows." With that warning hanging in the air, the sheriff turned back to his vehicle, leaving them both grappling with the implications. As the headlights disappeared into the distance, Jake felt a new sense of responsibility spring to life within him. Their project was more than just about playground swings. It was a movement toward unity and clarity. They were carving out a space where renewal could flourish, for both their lives and their children's. The turbulence of scrutiny had only solidified his resolve. "We can't let fear lead us," he said softly, looking into Clara's eyes. "Exactly," she replied, her optimism bolstering him. "It's time we shared our vision. We need every ally we can find." In that moment, Jake realized they were not merely fixing fences and hammers, they were building bridges, resilient structures leading to a shared future. Inspired, he proposed, "Let us organize the first meeting. Invite the neighbors, and openly discuss what we're aiming to achieve. We can show them the impact this can have." "Agreed," Clara nodded, newfound excitement easing the prevailing tension between them. "Let us focus on why this matters, creating safety for Tommy and all the kids in the area." The mere thought of putting their dreams into action ignited a fire in Jake. They could actualize their desires not just through labor, but by inviting the world into their vision together, united against the shadows of doubt. That night, they worked tirelessly setting up the logistics for their neighborhood meeting. Even though they arrived at moments of uncertainty, their shared laughter and palpable excitement wove a tapestry of connection. They were no longer draped in the burdens of their past. They were crafting something bold and imminent, like the stars that stitched the dark sky above them, lighting their way forward. Days passed in a flurry of invitations, shared dialogues, and community input. Clara took the lead, posting flyers around town, while Jake captured the plan's concrete ideas born from seeds of imagination. And then, the day of the neighborhood meeting finally arrived. As they prepared, a sense of transformative anticipation coursed through him, challenging the shadows that had held him hostage for so long. The gathering began under a vast Texas sky, where old grievances hung like vapor in the air, but hope shimmered just beneath the surface. Families began trickling into the space they had envisioned, and what blossomed from that innocent gathering was an outpouring of support and collaboration that far outshone their original expectations. As conversations unfolded, he watched Clara light up with enthusiasm, presenting ideas and collecting feedback from animated discussions. Her confidence surged, and Jake felt inseparable from her awakening. With every hand raised to contribute, he felt their shared vision firming into existence, no longer just a dream, but a project becoming reality. Standing together at the forefront, he recognized the depths of his own growth, no longer just a single father reluctant to forge connections. He was an advocate for a space that nourished dreams and safety. What started as a fear-laden path toward Clara had transformed into a collective journey toward revival. That night, as they looked out at the community rallying behind the idea of a playground, at the children chasing fireflies, it was clear that genuine partnerships rose above judgment, offering redemption through resilience. Jake reached for Clara's hand, feeling the warmth of fulfillment envelop him. He had not only encountered resistance, he had conquered it. No longer defined by whispers swirling through town, he stood recognized for his desire to create change not just for himself or Clara, but for their children who now had a solid future built on trust and community. In that moment, Jake understood. He had achieved not just a project, but a rebirth. He had transformed from a man trapped in sorrow to an architect of joy. Everything had shifted, and he was finally committed to a life without fear, without shadows rooted in responsibilities shared with Clara and nestled deep in the laughter of children. "Let us finish what we started," he whispered, the promise illuminating their journey ahead, an irrevocable pact forged in the fires of collaboration. Now, Rudy and Claire weren't just survivor spirits, they were a family redefined by hope willingly embraced. You need to subscribe now so you don't miss the next exclusive emotional stories. This is the moment to show your support. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm. Comment your reactions and theories about this inspiring conclusion. And don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this transformative journey.